Thank you everyone for joining us. This is an introductory webinar with a Q&A session at the end. My name is Ashley Thompson. I'm a customer solutions engineer here at SquaredUp, and today we're going to be talking about SquaredUp for System Center Operations Manager. Just before we dive into the product, let's talk a little bit about who we are. So SquaredUp is a software development company, and we've been visualizing IT data for over 8 years, sitting on top of System Center Operations Manager. We recently released an Azure Monitor offering as well, and as you can see there, we support Microsoft Enterprise Monitoring. We have a very transparent and simple pricing model. We don't believe that this should be difficult to understand or something that you have to get several months into a conversation with before you get to know how much it costs. Our pricing is all available on the website, so if you do want to take a look, squareup.com/pricing. That also includes a pricing calculator. We have hundreds of loyal customers worldwide, over 600, nearing 700 now, and they are very supportive of what we do. You can see in the top right-hand corner here, we have a 98% support rating. I believe that was for February, but people keep on coming back to us. Our customers have a really high renewal rate of 93% there, and this is quite obvious when we talk about our passionate community of over 2,000 experts. We have a community answers site where everyone works together to help each other on a daily basis. And we really do love what we do. You can see from the outlay, hopefully once you see the product as well, that we really enjoy helping people to understand their IT monitoring data. So our vision is for that golden single pane of glass, somewhat mythical in today's modern IT world, but what we're aiming to do is provide you with that single pane of glass. We want you to be able to monitor every application, not just the ones that make you money, your in-house calendar apps and HR apps, for example. We want you to build a dashboard for that so that everyone understands its health. We want you to build dashboards from the reporting up, so every one place for every app, whether that's just a very high-level availability dashboard or right down to the nitty-gritty performance data as well. We believe that every team should be able to build dashboards that they require for their monitoring data up and down the stack. So that management dashboard, whether that's sort of SLA-based or simple availability monitoring, the service desk being able to see their KPIs alongside their ticketing information and perhaps some advanced application monitoring, and then also your operations teams, the guys who really need to get deep into the monitoring data that you collect. And we also believe that you should be able to do this from every angle. So every team has a preference on what monitoring tool they want to use for their application. What they don't have is a consistent portal to be able to consume that data, and that's where SquaredUp comes in. Integrate your ITSM tools, your application monitoring, your log collection, all of this into one portal for everyone to consume in a consistent manner, and you all are on the same page should you need to troubleshoot an issue. So, what is SquaredUp for SCOM? So it's a very lightweight IaaS application, sits on top of a Windows server, and it takes about 5 minutes to install. We provide you with out-of-the-board dashboards for a number of common objects, including Windows Server, SQL Server, IaaS, etc., all of those standard Microsoft management packs. We also provide community dashboard packs for vendor management packs as well. So these are pre-built views that sit on top of the discovered objects and the collected data for those management packs, whether it's Veeam, Nice, Office 365, various other management packs that are out there. Using SquaredUp, you can also map and model your applications using VADA. That's our Visual Application Discovery and Analysis tool. This lets you take the discovered connections between objects and save it into a monitored object via the Enterprise Application Designer that you can then build views on top of. This means that you can build application monitoring straight into SCOM itself, which typically you'd use the distributed application designer for, except we take all of the pain away. We do the health rollups, the relationships, and you can even add in availability monitoring to that application. You're able to build custom dashboards on top of those applications in minutes, so exposing the metrics that matter, providing insight from other tools, whether that's your application monitoring or perhaps your ITSM tools, very, very quickly. Our UI allows you to just select the types of metrics that you want to. It will even prompt you for the type of objects you want to display on top of applications that you've built. We'll also give you live views of your monitoring data. So this isn't we collect the data once a day and you display it for reporting purposes. This is live views. Every page in SquaredUp refreshes every 60 seconds, meaning that you have access to the latest metric information, any alerting and health changes that are available to you, as well as SLA data on the fly. We also query your external tools on that page refresh. So new tickets will be refreshed every 60 seconds if you're pulling them in from the likes of ServiceNow. Your log collection from Splunk will always be visible as soon as it's available to us. And we want you to see the data that matters to you, whether you're an application owner, perhaps you're working in a DevOps scenario where you're building and managing that application and supporting it, your service desk who just need at-a-glance information, whether it's high-level insight into your ticketing or deeper information around your alerting, and also your infrastructure as well. There's loads of data that SCOM collects. The main trouble that people have with SCOM is the clunky console that takes a long time to navigate, a long time to understand, and SquaredUp is incredibly easy in comparison. You're also able to drill down into our dashboard. So you see an object that changes health state, so from healthy to warning, for example, click into it, investigate the alerts, look at the performance, and understand it right down to the low levels. And finally, our dashboards are publishable on wallboards and intranet pages via our open access feature. This will load a non-interactive dashboard that you can share around your wider organization without having to worry about figuring out permissions within SCOM itself or even having to log into the page. So how does it work? SquaredUp for SCOM is an executable that you download from our website. You install it onto a Windows VM running IIS. We will install any prerequisites required during the deployment. And you'll note there that there is no data stored on that server apart from the configuration. SquaredUp itself doesn't have any of its own databases. We are just reading data from all of the tools that you currently use, meaning you don't duplicate that data. You access SquaredUp via a secure HTTPS connection, authenticating using your user account. So that's via the SCOM SDK. So any role-based permissions that you've already configured will be represented within SquaredUp. You'll only be able to see the objects you're allowed to. You'll only be able to run the tasks that you're allowed to. And we have some functionality as well that will allow you to hide dashboards from some users as well if you require. So the VM itself accesses the SCOM SDK. We use the SDK to, first of all, authenticate, and then we use it to request alerting and health state data. Now, that's coming directly out of the Operations Manager database, the short-term retention. What we do for performance is via a SQL connection, go directly into the SCOM data warehouse. This gives us so many benefits. For one, it's incredibly fast in comparison. And for the second, it is actually going to give you all of that long-term retention as well. And where we're already authenticating against the SDK, we just apply those permissions off the back of the SCOM role-based access controls that you have in place. And then finally, to access your external tools, we either use a REST API connection into your ITSM, APM, or log collection tools. We give you simple, basic OAuth and even Azure Active Directory authentication options to read that data in. The tools themselves, as long as they can provide a JSON format response and they run on a REST API, you'll be able to pull that data in. Or alternatively, you can use a Microsoft SQL connection using a secure SQL connection string to read out any of your other System Center tools or any arbitrary Microsoft SQL database. And all of those authentication options and stores are encrypted on the server itself. So what are enterprise applications? I mentioned these briefly earlier. An enterprise application allows you to leverage your SCOM agents to map your applications using our Vader tooling. So running netstat using your agents will give you the inbound and outbound traffic to each individual node. We'll then pair that up with any service or process that's communicating at that moment in time. This allows you to build out a topology of your application, so the infrastructure view of how that application is deployed. You can then add in availability monitoring in the form of a URL test, a TCP port check, or even utilize a custom PowerShell script to define the health state of your application, or use an existing piece of monitoring you have for that. The PowerShell option is the most flexible and one of the most powerful ways of monitoring any application, as it will allow you to log in, click through pages, require an expected output, and then provided it returns a true-false at the end, it will tell SCOM whether or not it's healthy or unhealthy. And it can use run as accounts and profiles in SCOM, meaning it can be secure testing of those applications as well. Once you've built the application, this is saved into SCOM as a new management pack, and now you have an object to build dashboards on top of. So that lets you evaluate the performance data from the objects contained within it, and then pair that up with any external monitoring data as well, including any KPIs or ITSM tooling that you may have that you want to be able to pull data from, meaning that everyone has a single view to be able to access your log collection, your application monitoring, your infrastructure, and also your ticketing as well. So that's enough talking about it. Let's see it in action. Just switch to the correct slide. Here we go. Perfect. So this NOC view is built in, on top of a broad scope. So we are looking at all of the infrastructure within our environment. It is quite a small environment, but you can do this for any size environment. To pull back the health state of all of our computer objects, our servers, any alerting, and here we've scoped this one by severity and this one by resolution state. You can see we've also listed the top 5 performance metrics for CPU, disk, and memory. So at a glance, we can see straight away any servers that are unhealthy, all of the alerts that are open over the last 12 hours, as well as those objects that need some resolutions put in place. This is what I'd refer to as a morning coffee dashboard. We've listed off the alerting down below, and we've also displayed our ServiceNow instance, as well as unhealthy enterprise applications, servers, offline gray servers, and any open changes we've got open in ServiceNow as well. Drilling into any of these, I can happily click into the server donut here, which will give us what we call a matrix tile, displaying properties as well as KPIs against these objects. And then we can drill down further into, say, a web server. The class structure you have in SCOM will be represented within SquaredUp. So here we've presented some pre-built views for iOS Web Server and Windows Server 2016, because we know that this object is a member of a group or has a class discovered upon it. So you can create a view for a class of object, and it will be visible on all objects of that class as well. Saves time building views for a particular common component that you like to dashboard on top of. You'll also note that we have different views depending on those classes. If I drill into the CPU graph here, this is tapping into the data warehouse. So typically in SCOM, in the monitoring workspace, you have access to 7 days worth of data. But what we can do is we can look all the way back to as far as this object has been monitored for. And you can see this is incredibly quick. Even when I click all, it's giving us data all the way back to February last year. We can hone into spikes, so if there's a particular area that we want to investigate, we just click either side of it, and we can even then compare this to other objects as well, whether this is one of the out-of-the-box groups or whether it's one you've created. We now have 3 objects worth of data. I'm going to click on 7 days here, 7 days worth of data, and then we can export this to Excel as well. So that's going to give us not just the not just the graph, but also the raw data points as well. So the graph and our raw data points. So if you need to take this into something like Power BI to analyze the data further, you're able to do so very easily. Next, I want to talk about application monitoring. So I'm just going to jump into our sales app here. So with our Enterprise Application Designer, we let you map and model your applications using your existing SCOM infrastructure. Now, this view is built upon discovered data from these objects. I'm just going to drill into our application server in the middle and show you how we'd build this view. So coming over to Vader, this is going to trigger a discovery on this server using a SCOM agent task. It's going to present to us services with inbound and outbound traffic, and all I have to do is filter in these by clicking Add. In particular, I'm choosing this order proc win service, and it will start to build out the topology of our application. We can see we have a connection here to a SQL server on port 1433. And when we run discovery on the SQL server, we'll be able to see the specific SQL instance and database that this is communicating with. And that's just by triggering a few additional discoveries within SCOM itself. We may see round objects. These are things that aren't monitored by SCOM. In particular, this is just an EC2 endpoint, and we can remove these from the view very easily. Perhaps you discover a connection there that is key to your application, and you now know that you should be monitoring it. That's something to take to the SCOM console to configure. If I look at the inbound traffic for this application server, we can see that we have a web tier, and similar to the SQL tier there, if I run discovery on this server, we'll actually see the IAS objects related to this application. So it's very quick to understand the topology of your app, and once complete, you then have a couple of options. The first one, if I jump back to our pre-built view, is to automatically monitor any Windows services. So this is now a monitored object in SCOM, and if I click into this, you'll be able to see our health state, and we can even do things like start this Windows service to resolve issues should it stop. Any of your SCOM agent tasks are available to you within SquaredUp itself. And the second thing that we'll do is create TCP port checks between these component groups, so between the web tier and the app tier. And should there be an issue, this line will actually go into a red state, and there will be alerting around that as well. So we have our saved object. This is just the topology. We'll take a look at the availability monitoring in a second, but I just want to highlight the analyze feature. So we have information here that is pertinent to everyone. So whether it's the SQL team, the IIS team, or even just the core infrastructure guys, there is data that SCOM collects that you won't typically use. But here we can see in the context of our application, which has just gone unhealthy, which is quite useful, exactly where the problem lies. Now, we can see it's not an infrastructure issue here. So if I jump over to our availability view here, this is going to tell us hopefully what's wrong. So our response time is a little bit high, and we can see that our health state over the last 12 hours has been pretty poor. Now, if I jump into our availability all, this is actually examining the application not just with SCOM data, but with external data as well. So up the top, we have our SLAs using the SCOM health state from the data warehouse, but we also have global tests using a URL tester called Pingdom. We can see our response times are pretty high in some locations. SCOM also confirms this. You can see those high peaks there. But we've embedded some graphing from an application monitoring tool. So here we can see New Relic data, and this is a graph that has been embedded within SquaredUp itself. And down the bottom, we've just shown the scalar values of the results of these tests as well. If you want to examine the SCOM data, it's very easy to build reports using the historical data as a comparison. So these are using the performance report tile within SquaredUp. What we're doing is we're comparing, in some cases, metrics, so SQL compilations per second versus recompilations a second. You can see the dotted line is the comparison, the solid line is the current. Or you can do time comparisons as well. And in this case, we've actually compared a time frame as well as those two metrics. So we can very easily see, is this spike that we can see on the graph, is that related to everyone hitting their lunch break and accessing the application? Or is that actually something that needs investigating, that's out of the norm? You can then drill into any of the objects as well. So we've listed out the instance database and log files for the SQL objects. If I click into the database, you'll see that we have more metrics available to us, as well as things like free space. And if I move across to the database, to the monitored entity view here, we can even see properties that SCOM's discovered. So the collation, whether it's in read-only or not. And this is available on all objects. Next, if I just come along to ServiceNow, What we're doing here is querying the ServiceNow API to ask for any open instance and changes related to the server objects that have been stored as configuration items, that's CMDB CI items, within ServiceNow's CMDB. We have the ability to click into a segment on the donut, which will take us through to the list of tickets that make up that segment. Or we can click into the individual tickets down below, and that will take us straight through to the ServiceNow portal. Both of those will take you straight through to the ServiceNow portal, whether that's to gain more information, add some notes, or even resolve the tickets. It just gives you quicker access to the data from these external tools. Now, if I move across, we've monitored this application using Azure Application Insights as well. So here we've used our Custo query to be able to read data back out of Azure App Insights. And we've shown our requests, our exceptions, and also our response time using that tool as well. Similarly, if you're monitoring your applications using New Relic or Dynatrace or any of the big APM tools, having that alongside your infrastructure monitoring information just gives everyone the quickest and most amount of data required to fix a problem should it arise. And that's similar to how we're seeing Splunk here. So in this case, we're again searching through Splunk for the objects, the server objects within this application to present the pertinent data to you. And when it comes to integration, there really is no limit to the number that you can communicate with. As long as it's a REST API that can return a JSON format response, you'll be able to read the data out. Okay, so that's everything that we had to show you as a sort of very quick introduction to SquaredUp for SCOM. If I just come back to the slides here. So I'm going to pop myself on mute whilst I just read through a couple of your questions, and then I'll come back to answer them. If you have any, please do ask. Okay, so the first question is what management packs are required for the Enterprise Application Designer? There is a class library and a task library. So the definition of the app in terms of the class, from the class library, and then the task library is just what we call data on demand tasks. They provide the results of NetStat to SquaredUp to then present to the user, as well as a few other useful ones. There are some additional management packs for the IIS and SQL discoveries, but outside of that, the only thing that we save into SCOM is the application once you've mapped and modeled it. Those default management packs before you've even mapped an application, they don't do anything themselves. They are just discovery and tasks. The saved object you'd manage in the same way as you would normally with a management pack. You can save it directly within SquaredUp into SCOM, but then if you wanted to, say, remove that management pack, you would go into the administration workspace to do that. Can you set role-based access on dashboards? Yes, is the short answer to that. We have a feature called Team Folders, which allows you to grant author rights against a folder, but it also gives you the ability to restrict access from other users. So, for example, granting the everyone group, which is anyone who logs in, no access to the folder means that it will be hidden, and then you can issue out the view and owner rights and author rights to an AD group, for example, allowing you to just essentially give a custom navigation experience. I should clarify, up the top here are our folders and our dashboards, and when you create a new dashboard or folder, in the folder options here, there's just a permissions button. Once you convert a folder to a team folder, it's just these permissions here. So the role is either to simply view it, author within it, or owner, which gives them the ability to rename and delete the folder as well. Selecting no access to everyone there, that's how you just prevent everyone from being able to see it. Just on top of that, we do utilize your role-based access in SCOM, so whatever you've configured there will be represented. So a question around the Essentials package, what features are available? So the Essentials is the lowest package that we offer. It's at a pretty competitive price point. It gives you access to just SCOM data, so health state, alerting, and performance data. But you'll also get all of the drill down functionality, the ability to manage things like maintenance mode, run SCOM agent tasks. It's essentially just a better version of the SCOM console without any of the application monitoring or the external data. I should add on the knowledge base, if you go to reference, there is a licensing overview. If you want me to send that to you, then just drop us an email, hello@squaredup.com, and I'll send that across. What does the trial include? So the trial is fully featured. So it's for 30 days from when you first activate. It's unlimited users, dashboards, applications, and integrations. The full-blown product, once you've purchased, outside of the packages, the only thing we restrict is the number of users. But once you've bought a package, you can create as many dashboards you want, map and model as many applications, and likewise integrate with as many tools as you want to. There's no sort of limitations on the latter three there. The trial is very straightforward to download and set up. It takes between 5 and 10 minutes at most. Fully recommend installing it. There's some out-of-the-box views. You'll get a feel for how much benefit you'll get within a very short time span. I've mentioned the knowledge base a couple of times there. I might as well just run through these a second. So the knowledge base, support.squaredup.com/scom, does have walkthroughs, troubleshooting, general information around security, permissions, deployment. It's a really great resource to just get you up to speed. And if you do have any sort of requirements for training, our YouTube channel does have a whole bunch of content as well. So just search SquaredUp on YouTube. And then also our community answers platform. So not so much a knowledge base, but it is people assisting each other, not just with SquaredUp itself, but with SCOM, Azure, PowerShell, SQL, you name it. There's a question on there already. And just post away, ask questions, answer them, help each other out. That's what we as a community love to do in the SCOM world. The availability monitoring within the application designer. Can I choose where to monitor from? Yep, absolutely. So the way that you define the watcher nodes within the enterprise application designer is essentially a selection at the bottom of the designer that just says where you want to monitor from, and it's just a SCOM group, so you can set up as many objects or servers to monitor from as you like. Best practice, monitor it how your end users would access the application. So if it's within the internal network, monitor it from within the internal network. If it's external, monitor it from the external network. If it's both, do both. Just make sure that it's effective. You don't want to test it in a way that is not a good representation of how your users access it. Otherwise, things like SLAs are thrown out the window. Okay, there's another big question there on the application designer and supported operating systems. So to my recollection, Windows Server 2012 R2 and above. Same with SCOM, we typically support the newest version as soon as it comes out. And SCOM 2019, yep. So SCOM 2019 UR1, because there's not any massive changes with how the URs work within SCOM in terms of like the fundamentals, SquaredUp should, big sort of caveat, should always work with the new releases. Typically we do get a pre-build to test against anyway, so any updates to SquaredUp and SCOM itself should just work. If you do run into any issues, our support team, as you saw at the beginning, is incredible, and they'll help you work through those problems. Just on the note of the support team, during the trial, you are fully supported as well. If you would like a one-on-one demo, then please feel free to come through to us and I'll set that up. We've just hit the end of our slot there. There are a couple more questions. I'll come back to you via email. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Please do download the trial. It is very straightforward to set up, and like I said, you'll be up and running in no time. Thanks again. Have a great day.